Hello, good morning everybody. Good morning, thank you for being here. It's a great pleasure to have all of you here today for this conference on economic planning in the Anthropocene. I'm thrilled that you accepted the invitation to engage with this crucial and under-researched topic, and I hope that we will have 2 very productive days. A few practical information first. Concerning the program, there is a small change. I have to announce that Daniela Gabor had to cancel her participation due to urgent family issues. However, very kindly, Jakob Hasselbach, where is Jakob? Thank you, accepted to step in, and I'm very excited to learn more about his comparative research on planning between France, Denmark, and China. For our material sustenance, coffee breaks and lunches will be provided for everybody just outside the room. Tonight, there will be a dinner for the guest speakers, and tomorrow we will have a dinner cocktail for everybody. So this conference is also, of course, a small organizational challenge. I have to thank the University of Geneva, the Geneva School of Social Sciences, the Department of Economics, History, Economics and Society, and the Swiss National Science Foundation for their support. From the outset, François-Xavier Hutto, where is François-Xavier? François-Xavier Hutto, who is there, and Anna Bensussan, where is Anna? Here, were involved in the preparation. Carole Coluni, who is the secretary of the department, also provided highly effective administrative support. And I'm also very grateful to Guillaume Dreyer. Where is Guillaume? I don't see Guillaume. Guillaume is there. And Gaia Valenti. Gaia, where is Gaia? I don't know. She was there a moment ago. Who provided some decisive help on the finish line. So thanks to all of you. In this brief introductory address, I propose some elements of context for our debates, and will attempt to clarify what I see as the main stakes of our discussion. I don't think this is an overstatement to say that we are at a turning point in the global political economy. From the perspective of planning, 2 elements are symptomatic. On the one hand, the influence of neoliberalism, the strongest intellectual opponent of planning, is retreating, with a renewed interest in industrial policy and technological sovereignty. On the other hand, ecological disruption and the rise of algorithmic forces of coordination represent new structural conditions for the planning debate. The very possibility of discussing planning design in Geneva illustrates some of these shifts in the intellectual and political landscape. In his book, The Globalist, Quinn Slobonial refers to the Geneva School as both a group of neoliberals practitioners and a place of theoretical flourishing. This provides some relevant background for our discussion. In the 1970s and 1980s, Geneva was an operational site for the neoliberal counter-reform. A group of scholars and administrators based in Geneva opposed the push at the UN by developing countries for a new international economic order. They promoted instead an international economic order, liberal order. Their objective was to advance towards a world of economic constitution, to deploy a set of enforceable liberal rules that would preserve private initiative and competition as the founding stone of the global economy. The leading economic lawyer, Ernst Ulrich Petersmann, was very straightforward about their rationale. Quote, "The invisible hand of market competition must by necessity be complemented by the visible hand of the law," end of quote. The appellate body at the WTO, the widespread protection of free capital flows, and the development of private arbitrage to settle state investor disputes are among the key achievements of this neoliberal program. Our times are somehow different. While there is no major progressive push, the rise of non-Western economies is drastically changing the balance of power in the international arena. The US-led backlash against globalization is a reaction to that challenge. For the past decade, the paralysis of the WTO and multiple economic sanctions have signaled a regime shift. It blew open with an all-out attack on free trade by the second Trump administration. The current fragmentation and polarization in the international arena threaten to undo the neoliberal achievements of the Geneva School. Yet, this is no good news. In this realist moment, there is not a single glimpse of evolution toward a subordination of markets to a cooperative management of global public goods. As economic diplomacy is driven by immediate trade and investment interests, norms regarding worker rights, the environment, or the development of public services are completely overlooked. In short, business concerns still prevail over development prospects. In that sense, we still live very much in the shadow of the Geneva School. However, the demise of the project of a global rule-based competitive order implies a repoliticization of economic issues. When Slobodian refers to the Geneva School, he also alludes to Geneva when Geneva was a neoliberal intellectual nursery. In the 1930s, many neoliberal thinkers came to Geneva to develop their ideas. The Graduate Institute of International Development Studies was an oasis for liberal thinkers fleeing the Nazi. His founder, William Rappard, was an economic historian. He was twice director of this university, the University of Geneva, and he was involved in the creation of the famous Mont-Pelerin Society after the war. Ludwig von Mises, the pioneer of the theoretical argument against socialist planning, held a position at the Graduate Institute, as did the leading figure of German ordoliberalism, Wilhelm Röpke. Friedrich Hayek taught a summer school there, and Lionel Robbins from the LSE gave 2 series of lectures in Geneva. In economic planning and the international order, a book based on some of these lectures given in 1935 by Robbins, Robbins argued that any form of planned economy, both at national and international level, is bound to be less efficient than a liberal economy. At the time, this position was marginal. The Great Depression ravaged Western economies, while the Soviet Stalinist industrialization was running at full speed. At the end of the 20th century, the Austrians' victory seemed almost absolute. Most economists and social scientists accepted that an absolute problem of knowledge made central planning impossible. As leading New Keynesian scholar Brad DeLong wrote at the time, quote, "Even liberal Keynesian social democrats acknowledge that the Austrians won victory in their intellectual debate with the central planners long ago." Today, the organization of this conference is based on the premise that the Austrian victory should be reconsidered in the light of the intensification of the ecological crisis. The Austrian view that dispersed knowledge revealed through market competition is ontologically superior to the administrative use of articulated and centralized knowledge is challenged by the failure of the current institutional order to stabilize the socio-ecological metabolism. We are experiencing what William Kapp labeled a loss of mastery. The prevalent forms of knowledge production and economic uses are inadequate to guarantee the perpetuation of a safe ecological space for our species. Hence, the proposal that satisfying needs within planetary boundaries requires shifting from the kind of market-designed inspired by neoliberal thinker, toward institutional design of 21st century forms of planning. To engage in that direction, one must first define planning and indicate the various and somewhat overlapping dimensions of this mode of economic coordination. Lionel Robbins, an ardent opponent of planning, proposed the following general definition. Quote, planning involves government control of production in some form or other. It is the aim of modern planning to supersede private plans by public plans. End of quote. The key element here is the preeminence of public decision over private economic projects. From a more positive perspective, Barbara Wooten advanced a similar idea. In her 1945 book, Freedom Under Planning, she defined planning, quote, as the conscious and deliberate choice of economic priorities by some public authority, end of quote. These two definitions emphasize the political side of planning, which entails both the political process of setting priorities and the administrative deployment of the infrastructural power of the authorities to achieve those goals. But economic planning has also a technical side. As Vassily Leontiev put it, quote, the whole idea of planning assumes the possibility of choice among alternative feasible scenarios, end of quote. But he added, feasibility is the key word. Planning requires some forms of calculation and representation to assess the technical space within which scenarios are feasible. This viability space results from the availability of economic resources and cross-sectoral interdependencies. And of course, the aim to stabilize the social metabolism implies that ecological accounting and modeling are included in the process. In addition to those political and technical aspects, planning also has a third epistemological dimension. The problem is not simply to reveal and mobilize dispersed and/or tacit knowledge. More profoundly, the question is how to protect individual and collective agency and how to preserve the opportunities of psychological investment that make life meaningful. And the Anthropocene, another complication, arises from the place we must set for nature. As philosopher Etienne Balibar explains, the epistemological challenge is that, quote, we must speak both for ourselves and for non-human actors, asking questions and providing answers, end of quotes. Balibar's paradoxical injunction to speak for the non-human rejoins the late Michel Aglieta's intuition. Looking for a path to exist the Capitalocene, Aglieta proposed to allow nature, quote, to become a social actor governed by its own rules, end of quote. Making nature a social actor governed by its own rules, this is perhaps an adequate definition of ecological planning. Our brief conference will not allow us to address in full those arduous political, administrative, technical, and epistemological challenges related to economic planning. However, it will be a great achievement if we make some progress toward the institutional design of planning devices. First, in the political dimension, this concerns the process of deliberation about priorities, scenario building, decision-making, and the way to convey collective action in a manner that allows consistencies with the planned objectives, flexibility to adjust to changing circumstances, and openness to innovation. Second, in the technical dimension, this concerns the tools that must be mobilized to plan and to control the deployment of the plan, and how democratic input, technical constraint, and ecological boundaries can be articulated into economic processes. And 3, in the epistemological dimension. Here, the crucial issue is about the frontier of the plan. We should ask what the epistemological limits of the plan are, where other logics should prevail: the market, the non-identity of nature, individuals' autonomy, self-organization, and how their irreducibly distinct time frames can be accommodated. The main challenge, huge challenge, is to devise principles as attractive and effective as Hayek's spontaneous order, to convey institutional change toward democratic forms of planning within planetary boundaries. So thank you again for all of you to accepting to engage in this conversation, and let me wish us 2 days of fruitful and inspiring exchanges.